Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida. Today is Monday. It is book club day. We are back to book club. This is a brand new book club. We are actually reading this book. So, Loyalty to Your Soul, The Heart of Spiritual Psychology. I'm going to be honest with you. This book is one that I used AI. So I let ChatGPT know. I said, hey, listen, I've been doing a variety of different book clubs. We have done authors like Wayne Dyer. We've done Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, A New Earth. We have looked at Mickey Singer's work, The Untethered Soul. We've done a lot in these book club discussions. They've been going on for a couple of years now. So if you have joined book club in the past or you're here today live with me now, let me know that you're here. And what I did was I put all of the books that we've done so far into ChatGPT, and what I said was, okay, based on these authors, these concepts, what we've discussed, what is the best book recommendation you have for what's next? And so I was actually feeling drawn towards a book that I think we'll do next. But I had never heard of this author. Had any of you heard of these guys? So Ronald Hulnick and Mary Hulnick, they're PhDs. I'd never heard of them. And I went, okay. And so I got the book. Hey, Charlotte, good to see you. Yes, guys, let me know when you're here, when you've arrived. Anyway, I got the book. It has a foreword, an introduction, the preface here, and then we got into chapter 1. So today we're going to discuss chapter 1, and I think a lot of this is sort of like build up. The book kind of sets the stage for, well, who are these authors? How did they kind of get into this journey themselves? And what do they do? And interestingly, they seem to teach a master's course in spiritual psychology. So if anyone's interested in the concept, you can take a master's course with them in it. But I thought, that must mean that this book gives some basic principles. And I'm excited about it. It seems like after each chapter, there are some great questions to sort of prompt us and help us think through things some more. And I hope you join me on the journey. We are live every single Monday at noon Eastern time, unless for some reason I have travel plans and I can't be here. And of course, you can catch the replay. So it's live on Instagram, Facebook, and it goes up onto the YouTube channel, Enlightened Minds Book Club. All right. With that, guys, let's dive in. So first thing I want to ask you all, have you ever had a moment where you experienced something that changed everything? It changed how you looked at life. It changed how you understood yourself. Like, we're talking a big moment. And I am curious if, just put a yes in the chat if you've had something like that. People describe this often as a spiritual awakening, where just something shifted that was so deep within, it caused you to interact and react and be in life in a different way. I had that moment. I've had a couple moments like that, actually. One was after my brain injury and being told by doctors this was my new normal. Something inside of me just shifted, like complete shift in how I was showing up and the questions I was asking. Well, why am I here and what's the purpose and all of this? And I just changed internally in a big way. And then I had an experience when I was in Iceland a couple of years ago where I experienced, people have this saying, we are souls having a human experience. And it's like one thing to say and maybe conceptualize about. It's a completely different thing when you experience it. And you can't know anything but that truth. And that's what happened to me in Iceland. It was like a 45-minute experience where something else had taken over my body and was helping to release things, and it was beyond my conscious mind. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced. And I'm not going to go into that here, but I'm curious to sort of prompt you. And this book really has us thinking, and he sort of starts out with saying, okay, I was like atheist, and then I was agnostic, and now I'm a believer. Why? What shifted? And so I'm curious, like for you, if you kind of reflect on, for a lot of time in my life, like I grew up Methodist. I got confirmed as a kid. And then I'll never forget saying to my parents, like, well, if I had been born somewhere else and we lived in a different country, we'd believe in a different religion. And so what makes this one right? And my parents said, it's a good question, Danielle. And I said, okay, I don't want to go back to church. Because I was like seeking something that hadn't been answered at church. And I couldn't describe it other than like when I looked at people, I saw God. And that answer wasn't in what I was hearing in that particular religion. And so, for a little while, I just became like agnostic. I was like, I don't, there's something, but I can't put my finger on it. And I didn't really think about it. And that I just went through life. I think most of us are just like going through life and we don't think about these things. But my car accident forced me, right? Like this major thing happened in my life and it forced me to stop and go, wait a second, what's the point of all of this? Why am I here? What's going on? And it caused me to think about and to learn to have faith in something beyond myself and to connect in with that aspect of myself. And then I found a lot of philosophy that just made a ton of sense to me. And we'll talk about, this chapter talks about the difference between spirituality and religion. And so whatever your religion is, like this book is going to be very insightful for you. And I hope you understand that. This is not like a conversation about religion, it's a conversation about spirituality, because I believe the spiritual dimension of life is one that a lot of us are not accessing. And it is where deeper meaning will come from, deeper understanding, that gnawing feeling of like, life's meant to be more, like, what is the point of all of this? Like, it gets answered when you develop this spiritual connection. And so that's what he talks about here. And he talks about how, he had said, I hoped that there was a God because then I thought the world would make more sense. If a supreme being exists, there must be spiritual principles and guidelines for living. I want to know, not just cognitively, but experientially, the nature of spirit and spiritual reality. He said, if there isn't a God, that seemed really preposterous. It would mean that we exist in a random, meaningless universe, leading lives with no ultimate purpose or significance other than those we create to suit ourselves. And have you guys ever considered this? I know these are deep questions. If you're just joining book club, these book clubs are meant to shift and change you, to enlighten you. That's why I call it Enlightened Minds Book Club. It's to make you push and think beyond just the day-to-day and the mundane stuff that we're doing. Like, there's more. So he kind of shares how he got connected to his first spiritual teacher, and I'm just going to kind of jump to that. This guy, he went and he studied psychology, and then he got into parapsychology, and this how do people, what are auras, and what are people connecting to? What is this stuff? And then he describes this meeting with this woman, Dr. Hunter. And I'll just very briefly kind of describe. She does an aura balancing on him, and I'll just describe what he says. So he says, soon they began asking me questions. They wanted to know if I'd ever had a dream in which I was in prison. I wondered, where did that come from? It wasn't even something that Dr. Hunter had brought up. How could he know that ever since I'd been a small child, I would occasionally dream that I was in prison and couldn't get out? I always awoke feeling frightened after these nightmares. I told all of this to Robert, and he continued to hold this crystal and simply asked, would you like to come out? I'd like that very much, I said. The door is unlocked, he told me. All you have to do is open it and walk out. And in my imagination, I did as he suggested. I pushed the door, and indeed it swung open, and I walked out. Robert continued this line of questioning for hours. So he starts to explain how he has this experience of this cleaning of his energy body, essentially, and this opening of his heart, where he starts to experience a deep love that he had never had access to before, something beyond his mind. And this is his spiritual awakening. This is his experience. So that's it's interesting to read about. It's always interesting. Eckhart Tolle, right, in what is the book called? In A New Earth, I think it's A New Earth, he describes how at the beginning, he was suicidal, and then he has this thought of well, who can't live with who? And then he's like, wait, are there two of me? What's going on? And he has this massive awakening to the fact that he is more than his thoughts, and there is something beyond them. He gains access to it, and he experiences the same thing this guy is experiencing, a deep love, an unconditional loving presence that just opens him and connects him with everything. So this is what we're talking about with a spiritual experience. And it happens, right? Some of you have said, no, I've not experienced it. Others of you have. And it's beautiful when it does. But even just understanding other people's will help you kind of understand what they're accessing and what a spiritual awakening is all about. So I thought this chapter got particularly interesting when he sat down with Dr. Hunter. So Dr. Hunter essentially spent her life really understanding the spiritual dimension and helping people connect more deeply to it. Okay, and so he has this moment where after he's had this session and he's had this life-altering experience where he's accessed this deep peace, this loving presence, and he's like, what is going on? And also, I have a million questions. And so I wanted to just pull out some of the questions he asked and dive into them, because I think, it's all about the meat of, well, how does this impact our lives, and how can we integrate this, and how can we learn from what this guy is sharing? So the first thing is, let me ask you this. This is something that Dr. Hunter asked him. Put a 1 in the chat if you believe this to be true. Do you give more than you receive? Do you feel like in relationships, maybe with your husband, with your children, at work, do you feel like you give more than you receive? Put a 1 in the chat if you feel that you are someone that gives more than you receive. All right. The guy here, the author, he answers Dr. Hunter and says, yes, like I give more than I receive. Like you're defining my like dynamics in all of my relationships that I see. Karen, Charlotte, like you guys feel the same way. And this is what she says. She pauses and she says, well, my dear, I'm afraid what you're going to have to do is give more. And he says, what? And nearly leaps off the table. If I'm already giving more than I'm receiving, why would I want to give even more? And listen to this. She looked at him with compassion and said, you see, the spiritual law is that we receive according to what we give. This is really important. She describes these spiritual laws as true as gravity, right? Gravity is working upon all of us, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, whether we know about it or not. Gravity is just working, just like the sun is just shining, okay? She says, the spiritual law is that we receive according to what we give. So if you feel that you're giving more than you're receiving, if you feel like that right now, you're giving more than you're receiving, she says you're either giving less than you think or you're receiving more than you think you are. Either way, to receive more, you must give more. Right? I remember reading, I forget where I read it, they said just open up all of the windows of your home and just give everywhere you can. And as you open those windows so you can give, the ability to receive will be opened up all around and it will flow to you. And I would put forth that we are receiving. We're receiving so much. We just take it for granted. You're receiving good health. The moment you lose your health, you will realize how absolutely incredibly fortunate you have been every moment of your life up until the day that you lose it. I promise you, because I've lost mine. And I can never shift knowing that. I have such gratitude every day waking up for the fact that I am healthy enough to go do things in life. We receive so much. Charlotte says, I agree, I give more. So Charlotte, you are receiving more than you believe, very likely. Or she says, you're giving less than you think, which I doubt that. So you're likely receiving more than you believe. And sometimes we believe, well, I gave to this person, they should give back. That's not how it works. You just give, and then in return, it comes. It's like it's an energy exchange. And where it comes from, you don't have control over. And sometimes you're not seeing it because you're expecting it to come from a certain route. Well, I should be receiving more money from this business organization, or I should be receiving this from this person. No, give and you'll receive. Give and you'll receive. There's a woman that lives around here near me, and she always baffles me because she's always giving. Like stuff that she absolutely loves, she gives. And I'm like, what in the world? But she's always also receiving. Like I see it, the flow in her life with material things as well as financial things. I see it, and it's because she's in such a beautiful state, like her heart is always open. Well, you could use this more than I do. Well, this is giving you joy. Why don't you take it? I love it, but you love it. It lights you up. You can have it. She just gives. Gives of her time, gives of her talent, gives of her energy, gives physical possessions, gives money when she needs, like she just gives. And so the same should be true for all of us. She says this is a spiritual principle. The more that you give, the more that you will receive. But do not have the expectation of where you're receiving from. Open all the doors and windows, give all that you can, and allow the receiving to just flow. It feels so good to give as well. And you'll start to, like, it's such a beautiful space. When you're giving, your heart is also open. And that's part of the key. An open heart is key to living life in a way that allows you to receive and enjoy and everything else. All right, so the other breakdown in the conversation is this aspect of religion versus spirituality. So he asked Dr. Hunter this because he's like, I'm just experiencing something here that like when I was pursuing and studying all these different religions, like they were getting to an essence of it, but this, I'm experiencing it now. So let's talk about this. She says, unfortunately, many people confuse religion with spirituality. All the world's major religions, when used in the ways they were originally intended, are exquisitely beautiful paths that lay out specific practices and approaches to assist people in their quest for a greater awareness of their connection with God. In other words, to grow spiritually. Every religion does that. That's the purpose of them. She says, religions are forms. Think of it, I love this analogy. Think of it as an automobile. Let's say you want to go from here to Santa Fe. A car is a wonderful way to travel there. But it's when the car itself becomes the focus of attention that you're distracted and forget that this is just a means for you to reach your destination. People often take great pride in their cars painting them different colors, adding all sorts of gadgets and frills. But all of that is irrelevant when your primary intention is just to drive to Santa Fe. I'm afraid religions often become vehicles for separating one group of people from another and both groups from God. You know, throughout history, more people have been killed in the name of God than for any other reason. That's strange, isn't it? And so what she's saying is, look, whatever religion you practice, it's fantastic, but don't get distracted by it. It's not the car that you're in. It's not one car is better than the other or whatever. It's just that you're in a vehicle that is going to be connecting you more deeply, whether that's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Islam, whatever it is, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, whatever it is, right? All of these, they have the same principles, the same essence, which is to deepen this connection, which is your spiritual connection, right? Which is what spirituality is all about, okay? She says, when people speak of spirituality, they simply mean awareness of the sacred reality of the divine essence within and beyond all creation. That's how I have experienced life since being a little kid. I look in the eyes of someone, animal, person, I experience plants, being in nature, and I feel divinity. Like I look at people and I see the divine in them. I've always felt that. And I didn't know that was spirituality, right? And that is the fact that, look, this is all God's creation. It's a divine creation. You are, I am, everything around us is. And accessing that is just so beautiful. So the next question that he asks, I told you we're going deep on this book, right, is why am I here? Like, what is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? And it's really interesting, right? So he asks it in this way. He says, what are we doing down here in these strange bodies, dealing with all of this pain and all this emotional suffering? Like, what is going on? Have you ever felt that way? Like, high five me, put a 5 in the chat if you have ever felt that way. I know I ask that question a lot. I'm like, if there is a God, why in the hell is there so much suffering? Like, what is going on? I have asked that question many times in my life, especially after my brain injury. I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Am I supposed to just live in pain every single day? Like, why am I here? What is going on? Put a 5 in the chat if you ever contemplated. So he asked the question. He says, what am I doing down here in this strange body, dealing with all this pain, dealing with all this emotional suffering? And this is what she says. It's beautiful. She says, that's a really good question. And I'm afraid I can only give you a partial answer at this time. From a spiritual viewpoint, Earth is a school that souls come to for the evolution of consciousness. All of us who are here earned the right to be enrolled as students, and there's a spiritual agenda or curriculum for each person. And it's really quite an accomplishment just to be here, a fact that's largely unknown to most of the world's population. So if we're in school, he says, what are we supposed to be learning? She laughs. I'm glad you said supposed to be learning, since until we begin to become aware of the nature of, let's call it Earth School, it's questionable whether very much learning is actually going on. To understand the Earth School, it's helpful to be aware that there are at least 2 levels of reality happening here simultaneously. This was super insightful. So she goes on to explain the 2 levels of reality. First is our physical reality, which all of you are experiencing right now, your 5 senses. It's very goal-oriented. We're creating in form in this life. Like we're going out, we learn to stand on our own 2 feet. We learn our own gifts and talents and unique offerings we can bring to the world. We go out there, we create relationships, we create impact, we exert our ability to control and influence things in the external world. We set goals, we accomplish goals. We go out into the physical world of our 5 senses, right? That's one reality that's happening on Earth, she says. The second reality, though, is spiritual evolution. And if you're listening to me right now, very likely this is something that your soul is knocking internally saying, pay attention, you're ready now. All right? And hopefully this book supports you on that journey. But it's about spiritual evolution. This is how she describes it. She says, spiritual evolution is simply another way of saying that one is becoming more and more aware of one's nature as a loving being. A soul doesn't separate experiences into good or bad, right or wrong. It sees all of them as learning opportunities. So a soul is not particularly concerned with specific outcomes in this physical world. It doesn't care if you get the promotion or you do X, Y, and Z thing in the physical. All right? And furthermore, the soul's not limited to the five senses. It uses a sixth sense called intuition, and a seventh sense referred to as direct knowing. Who has experienced this sixth sense? Put a 6 in the chat. Who has experienced their intuition before? You just had an intuitive knowing. I'll never forget, I was sitting at a restaurant, a sushi restaurant, with some people, and I took my chopsticks and I went to grab a piece of sushi, and as I'm putting it into my mouth, literally I'm told that's going to give you food poisoning. Like an intuitive insight. It wasn't my mind thinking, it was like my being going, that's going to give you food poisoning. And I didn't want to be rude, sitting here with all these other people, or awkward, and so I didn't put it down. I ate it. Guess what? The next week of my life, I was over the toilet, sick, because of food poisoning. And it's like, yeah, intuition is there. Good. Karen's got a 6 in the chat. Sauna's like, yes. Charlotte's like, yes, I've heard this. Intuition is there. What about direct knowing? Where you just know something to be true. I experienced this. I'll be curious to see how the book describes this. I experience this as like when I get chills, when someone says something that you know, there's direct knowing of the truth behind what they said. And your whole body gets chills. It's like, to me, that's direct knowing. It's like, whoa, yes. Yes, that's it. You hit it, that's it. And sometimes we get these insights ourselves, or talking to people, maybe they give us an insight about a dream or something like that. I know when I work privately with students and we do yoga therapy, there's a lot of this direct knowing. So those of you, Karen and others, Tina on here, you've had this direct knowing in a session with me where it's not your mind that tells you, there is a knowing in your being that speaks to you. And unfortunately, like a soul doesn't get into good or bad, she says, right? In the physical world, we get a lot of that. The physical world manifests through polarity. So there's up because we know down. There's sad because we know happy, right? There's freedom because we know control. We need the polarity in order to experience life. And living from a place of like spirituality says, well, I'm not going to have a preference of good or bad. I'm just going to be fine with the whole of it. I see that one is part of the other, that day is part of night. That's what creates 24 hours. I need the moon and the sun. I need darkness and light. And so it sees the whole of that, whereas our minds, and when we're in physical reality, we start to have preference. And that's where a lot of problems come from, right? Where a lot of our internal struggle with stress comes from, is because we're resisting how life is showing up or wanting it to be a different way. And it's like, no, soul level living, soul, if you're living from this level of awareness, they call it seeing through soul-centered eyes. I love that. I never heard that before. Is very different. And she kind of puts out, she says, what we're up against is this, if you call it maybe your inner roommate, right? That's how Mickey Singer talked about it, that is constantly like having preference and saying stuff. And this is on page 10. She says, it's the personality or ego, if you will, that divides everything into right or wrong. The ego always wants to be right and will go to great lengths to prove its case. Its main organ for sensing the world is the mind. Since the ego operates within physical reality with worldly objectives, it's not all that concerned with whether the soul learns its lessons or not. In fact, the ego only pays lip service to the soul as it continues about its busyness of attempting to fulfill its many desires. Truth be known, the ego doesn't really believe that the soul exists other than as a concept, since it sees itself as the center of the universe. That's what we're up against, okay? And that's why, why I've really enjoyed studying Eastern philosophies and yogic traditions, because they created practices, modalities for you to be able to access your soul, your higher self, your true self. That's the beauty of meditation, of yoga nidra. When I guide you through that, that's what you're accessing. So you go beyond the mind. We circumvent the ego, and you can get direct access of this. That's the power. And she says, seeing through soul-centered eyes that are open to perceiving the second type of reality I spoke of, is that's hidden to most people. So this concept that I think we're going to hear a lot throughout the book is this concept of seeing through soul-centered eyes. Okay, and this is where the principle that he kind of comes to, and I guess we'll get principles throughout this book, right, of this spiritual psychology. First principle, he says, is we are not human beings with souls. We are souls having a human experience. And how many of you have heard that phrase, oh, we're souls having a human experience. We're souls having a human experience. I like the way he phrased this, where he says, we are not human beings with souls, right? I'm not just Danielle, this human that has a soul. I am the soul that has come into this human experience, and my soul right now in this life is experiencing earth through Danielle. And my soul, what they put forward, what I would put forward, what all these other authors have put forward, is that your soul came here to learn certain lessons. And that's really where we start to move through self-awareness, self-actualization, not just, creating in the physical world, but for your soul to get the expansion that it's going for. And they have some great sentences. So, okay. He talked about throughout this book, or throughout this first chapter, it was called Light Bearers. And he says, light bearers are those we encounter throughout our lives who somehow play a significant role in our awakening. And he says in this chapter, I mentioned many. And maybe you've had some light bearers. Put them in the chat. I mean, for me, my mom has been one. She's the one who gave me Eckhart Tolle's book. Gosh, I knew her. She gave it to me. There's a note in there from I think I was in college. And I read it the first time and the thing went over my head. I didn't understand it. But she had attempted, and I kept the book. My spiritual teacher, Kamini Desai, Amrit Desai, her father, my neighbor, the book we just read, right, The Yoga of Relationships. He is certainly a light bearer for me, right? Tina says, me? Thank you, Tina. It's been great to work with you. And that's part of my intention, is to just shine light for others. It's like, I've gotten to wake up to this, and so once you do, you become a beacon to other people. Because of the way that you're living, how you're speaking, how you're interacting, people will get drawn to that. The people that are ready to awaken will get drawn to that. And so it's beautiful to just look at that. And authors, I think all of us would say, well, Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle and Mickey Singer, right? They've all enlightened us. And now Ronald Holnick and Mary Holnick are going to be light bearers for us, The book we're reading, for those of you that are asking, is Loyalty to Your Soul. Loyalty to Your Soul. So this is something that I think will be fun this week to sort of, if you would like to kind of chew on the stuff that you're learning. It looks like they're going to have some things to write at the end of each chapter. So light bearers in my life include, that's the question I just prompted you all with. Now the next question, if I am a soul having a human experience, then fill in the sentence. So right now, just sit with that. If I am truly a soul having a human experience, then what does that mean? What does that mean for your life? How does that shift things? How does that change things? How do you look at relationships you're having, things that have happened, the potential for your future? What does that shift for you? Put it in the chat if things are coming to you. For me, when I sat with that question, I said, okay, if I am truly a soul having a human experience, then there's absolutely nothing to fear. It's kind of like when you realize you're an actor in a movie, whatever happens in the movie doesn't matter. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear because it's a movie, right? You're going to be fine when the movie's over. Boom. That's what hit me. This life, there is nothing to fear. And I will never fail. That was another thing. I can't fail. It's all learning. Right? It's like, when you learn to walk, you fell down a bunch of times. Did you fail? No. It was part of learning to walk. You had to do that. So whatever failures are happening are actually beautiful learning opportunities. That's what hit me. If you guys have stuff, put it in the chat. I'll read it. I said, okay, if I am a soul having a human experience, then I'm infinitely capable of anything. Because a soul is divinity. You're divine, I'm divine, we're connected to God. So you're capable of anything, of absolutely anything. Tina says, look out world, here I come. Linda says, opportunity to grow spiritually. Yeah. If I'm a soul having a human experience, then I am here to grow, to learn, and expand. I think about plants, right? I just planted an herb garden, and it has been so fun. They just watching these little, them sprout up, and then they grow and they expand. Why are they here? Watch any plant out in nature. It's not thinking, oh, I need to grow faster than this plant, I need to do that. I planted 60 something fruit trees on our property. And it has been so fun to watch. Some of them are bearing fruit this year. Others grew really tall and they haven't bared any fruit. they're all doing their thing. What are they doing? They're growing, they're expanding, they're learning about their environment, right? That's what we're all here to do. Our soul came here to grow and expand and learn. If you look at everything through that lens, then life's fantastic. All right? And that's the last thing I wrote. If I'm a soul having a human experience, then it should be more fun and less serious. Is the last thing I said. Life should be more fun and less serious, if that is truly the case. So I would love to hear, maybe in the Telegram chat. If you're not plugged into Telegram, then let's make sure you get plugged into our Telegram chat. You can reply to this week's with your insights. And next week we'll do chapter 2. Now chapter 2 is kind of long. I'm new to this book, guys, so I don't know how long it's going to take us to discuss things. So why don't we, yeah, it's page 13 to 40. If we've learned anything from the past, I can handle like 10 pages at a time. But let's read the whole chapter 2, and then next week we'll just see how far we get in discussing. Okay, so we'll read the whole thing. We'll see how far we get in discussing, because this author, like, I don't know how much is like super relevant stuff to discuss and how much is backstory. I don't know. I'm new to him. So we'll figure it out together, but enjoy chapter 2. We'll be back noon on Monday, and I look forward to talking to you guys in Telegram between now and then. And yeah, what is it going to mean for your life this week, right? There's no fear. You never fail. We're here to grow, expand, have fun, take it less seriously, enjoy this ride, and tell a friend. Like, if you get a lot of that at this book club, tell a friend, have them join us, and I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.